Hello and welcome back, everyone, to our Secular Buddhist Essentials class. My name is Venerable Tarpa. I am so happy to be here. We're having Retreat Sunday today. Last month, last Sunday of every month, we have an online retreat, and everybody's here. We've been practicing all day. We love our online retreats. Please come to any future ones we have. Anyways, let's get on to today's class. Today's a very special day because today we're going to be finishing part one of Secular Buddhist Essentials, the text. So we've been working on this for months. And we finally come to the end part of it. And today's class is entitled Buddhism in the 21st Century. So it's going to be talking about the state of current Buddhism, and we're also going to get into some thoughts on Western Buddhism. As you all know, I'm going through and writing this. We're sharing it with the class, and all of this is going to be put into a text at the end of the program that we're hoping to shop and get published. So a lot of it isn't finished. And this class here probably will take a little more work. I wasn't sure how in-depth I wanted to get, but I thought I'd share what I have, and I'll make a text of what I'm sharing today available to everyone, along with the recording that we post. So I start off just talking about how the 21st century, in my opinion, is proving to be a golden age for Buddhism. With the convergence of, we have Buddhism, we have science, psychology, technology. We've never before had such a vast array of tools and skills at our disposal for the examination of the Buddhist teachings and the nature of reality, which are, of course, what the Buddhist teachings are about. Currently, there's countless research centers around the world dedicated to scientific study of Buddhism and contemplative practice. Buddhist thought and practices are also influencing are influencing as well as every branch of psychology and healthcare as well. Even the Buddhist concept of awakening as an accepted and viable human potential is now embraced across many disciplines, many different religions, spirituality. While Buddhist beliefs, values, and practices like meditation and mindfulness have become mainstream household concepts. This is unheard of in the past, right? Innovations have not only come from outside of Buddhism, but also internally, thanks to growing an openness and cooperation and collaboration of the various schools. Buddhist traditions are moving away from their prior style of isolation and are now actively engaging openly with the Buddhist global community. So currently we have Buddhist masters and scholars of all disciplines actively studying and comparing their traditions and the various Buddhist texts side by side and within each school's scriptural language, something unheard of in the past. So we have Theravadas with the Pali Canon, we have Chinese with the Chinese Canon, Tibetans with the Tibetan Canon, Zen Buddhism, their text, all comparing these side by side and investigating the Buddhist teachings. So today you'll see monastics in every colored robe attending and participating in each other's programs and retreats. When I was in Dharamsala in northern India, it was very common to see all the different colored robes at the Dalai Lama's teachings. We'd have Korean robes in gray, Zen monks in black, Theravada monks in gold, openly participating. However, I believe the single greatest benefit to modern Buddhism has simply been the internet. from the reliable availability of authentic Buddhist content at the click of a mouse anytime you want, to dedicated mobile apps like guided meditation apps. And then you have online Buddhist communities where practitioners can engage with others from the comfort of their own home and regardless of their global location, no matter where you are in the world. I remember I was in the Himalayas next to Bhutan, Sikkim. I was on a mountaintop at a retreat center, and for some reason I looked at my phone. I think I was just checking the time, and I couldn't believe that I had cell service on top of a Himalayan mountaintop. Extraordinary, right? But Buddhism hasn't just spread geographically. It's also spread and expanded in scope and understanding. Instead of a slow, generalized move towards a single global tradition, the opposite is actually happening. That today the various schools are actually growing and flourishing and reaching new audiences worldwide, while at the same time there's new presentations of Buddhist thought emerging as well, meaning that practitioners worldwide are seeking both traditional forms of Buddhism as well as new presentations that may share a more contemplative, pragmatic, and less religious view. You can see in various countries in America, you have traditional Buddhist monasteries popping up everywhere. And what I've seen so much is general common practitioners wanting purely authentic, in their minds, purely authentic Buddhism, asking their teachers not to do all the practices in traditional language. So many people are drawn to a deeply authentic style of Buddhism, at least authentic to them, right? Today there are a myriad of choices available for all of us to explore the Buddhist teachings. We currently have traditional masters representing the past. We have progressive masters introducing the future. We have scholars representing scriptural traditions or teachings, and we have master practitioners representing its practice and realization. However, when reflecting on the different varieties of presentations, traditions, and paths, many questions still arise. How exactly are we going to approach Buddhism in the 21st century? Will we hold it as a religion? Will we hold it as a philosophy or a spiritual path? Will we maintain that the essence of Buddhism it can only be transmitted through the teacher-student relationship? Or will we hold that the study of Buddhist text to be the most reliable? I've always believed that there's no single proper way of engaging in Buddhism. And I think to assert one method or teaching or tradition is simply not realistic. I think it's essential to restrain our habitual need to reify things and reify the teachings and practice into a single narrow narrative, which is very habitual for us, and instead to embrace the totality and magnificence of these convergent views, allowing individuals themselves to decide their own path, to realize that these different views don't threaten each other, but instead, each in its own way, adding great clarity to the whole. Any questions? What do you guys think of the future of 21st century Buddhism? That's kind of my take on it. Those are my thoughts of where it's going. Anybody have similar experiences? I remember a couple songs I was interested in, and they rejected any of the mantras or any of the chanting to be done in English. They asked the teacher to do them all in traditional. They all learned the traditional chants, and to them that was them getting authentic Buddhism. They wanted the authentic language, and yet others are quite the difference. Like ourselves as secular Buddhists, we're looking for clarity through the teachings. What do you guys think, David? Please.
Um, I'm a bit surprised, Tarpa, that you're so positive about the growth in Buddhism. I mean, as far as I can see, certainly in the UK, it's been in decline over the past 20 years or so. So what's the basis for your optimism?
Well, I think that that's just a short-term event. We've talked quite a bit about this, and it's a tough topic because nowadays it's complex. There's so many parameters. When you look at possible reasons why Buddhism seems to be in decline now, um, let alone do you have probably initially people think that worldwide religion isn't as popular as it used to be. That's declining. But then you have things like the the uh, the assimilation of it is so much broader. Now you have so many different people offering teachings online, qualified and unqualified. You have apps that teach meditation. You have people can watch videos. So is it that it's in decline, or is it that people just aren't gathering in communities like they normally would, or even 10 or 20 years ago the only way we didn't have apps or anything else. So it's quite complex, and it's hard to. And then so much of Buddhist teachings have become mainstream and kind of trickled into just psychology and science, that you don't necessarily have to be a member of a Buddhist group to learn these things. You can learn meditation and mindfulness in yoga class. My cable TV service has a channel to learn meditation and mindfulness. It's pretty good too. I was watching a little bit, but you can learn these things. Workplace stress reduction, they have it.
Uh,
So it's spread out so far. Maybe that is, and if you notice, I'm not really giving an answer. I'm just outlining some of the parameters. Because
yeah.
me and David went kind of crazy thinking about it. Luckily, SBT, we seem to be moving forward nicely and picking up people, picking up practitioners, but a lot of groups are really declining, and yet there's a handful that seem to be doing quite well. So that's a complex question. But the bigger answer is that Buddhism has always been in a state of ebb and flow, of peaks and valleys. Now, Buddhism currently is coming down from a golden age. We had in the 60s, the 70s, 80s, we had the rise of the Dalai Lama, who took the world by storm. No doubt about that, right? At one point, he was the second most photographed person in the world. So Nobel Prize. And then we had Thich Nhat Hanh, who made such an impact on the world. Like your country might not us, but he was deeply involved with the United Nations. The United Nations adopted his 10-point list as the United Nations Charter. A lot of people don't remember that. He walked with Martin Luther King. Huge. And then let's not forget all of the great Zen masters that, especially in America, made a huge impact on America. So one of the things we have to think about in context, and also Buddhism was new in the 70s. It was a new, excited, and trending thing, right? What is this mystical, wild, marvelous thing? And all these spiritual people, unique people found it, were excited about it. I've just become a Buddha and I can levitate and I have tantric instruments. So it was exciting. So I think now we're kind of we're kind of coming down from that. And there's a plus and a minus. Yeah, there's that energy might not be there, but you can imagine as practitioners that normalization is really important, right? It used to be exotic, weird. You could call yourself a Buddhist because it was weird and you were something cool. Hey everybody, see these beads? I'm now a Buddhist. I'm a tantrika. But now it's become normal. It's starting to become normalized, and this is a very healthy thing for the Dharma, where people are starting to raise their families, and the kids are learning about Dharma at a young age. So this is a healthy place to come down to. Now, is it on the outs? Is it going to decline to the point of disappearing? I don't think so. It survived over 2,000 years. I mean, India, it had a big decline just around 1200 BC, if everybody remembers their Buddhist history. And it survived that as well. So I think it's a natural thing. I think you have to look at it in a bigger contrast, more objective view. But your guess is as good as mine. I don't think anybody could answer that question. But anyways, yeah, but I am optimistic about it. You're right. Sangpo.
Thank you, Tarpa.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the access to information on the internet and the breaking down of barriers that offers does sort of help Buddhism. But I think also the building of barriers, I think in society is bringing back a almost a nasty side of Christianity, which is more on the white supremacist, racist
Yeah. Let's
sort of
stick with
side, and
Buddhism.
that's and
Let's
that
stick
and
with
that's
Buddhism,
coming
Sangpo.
that's coming in the UK, and the problem
Yeah.
is young people aren't actually going to Buddhism. What young people tend to be doing is going to Christianity. Some of it, the organized Christianity,
And
Church
that's
of England,
wonderful.
and that's wonderful. But also the other side, which isn't so wonderful,
Okay. Okay.
and that's a concern because Buddhism
Yeah.
is
But
compassionate
that could
and
also be
understanding.
trending, right? We have to look at more
Yeah,
long term. Especially nowadays, everything's trending. Everything's moving this and that. Let's just worry about what we do and the work that we're doing. Thank you, Sampo. Dana?
I think that that there is just the studies coming out. They're saying that the happiness in at least the United States and probably Western Europe or whatever, or the contentment or the with life has gone down and continues to go down. And I think this also goes along with social media that we have it the the stuff right in our face all the time of what to be fearful of.
Yeah.
And so people are still going to be looking for a way to deal with that. I know that I was, when what brought me to Buddhism wasn't directly was Buddhism. It was the Beatles and them going to the Maharishi and so I learned TM and then I was yoga and then Buddhism. And the other thing that I've been noticed also is sanghas that are focused on recovery, and they don't have teachers. There's just
And
volunteer,
it's a huge
and
place
so
for Dharma to succeed.
yeah, and they have books, and
Yeah.
and the pretty one book that I've read. It's pretty traditional and very upfront, and something that I think that any of the masses would enjoy.
Thank you,
And
Dana.
yeah,
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Dharma, please.
I think that the interest is still there. It's just that there was also like a string of scandals that happened, and a
Yep.
lot of people are leery of the whole Lama guru relationship. So people are now looking to more solo, independent Ronin type of Buddhism.
Yeah, I think
And
there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah, they've become just well, what's the word for that? Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of self-teaching going on. I know of a group that meets on Signal, and they're all consider themselves Mahayana Buddhists, but they sort of all broke away from different Tibetan schools and Zen schools and
In a sense, that's what
Theravada
we did as
schools,
well.
and they just try to follow the teachings,
Yeah,
but without having a leader or a central head.
yeah, it's
More
true.
traditional forms have.
Yeah, traditional Buddhism made a lot of promises, and then when the teachers fell from grace, it broke a lot of hearts. And I think that helps people, or that draws people to secular Buddhism when we set all that aside. We're going to be talking about that in a minute. Thank you, Dharma. Thank you. Wangmo, please.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's important to remember too that in the Western culture, we're a culture of fads. So even if we are seeing some declining here, if you look at other countries, I mean, Buddhism isn't going anywhere. There's millions and millions of followers. So we just tend in the West to have, like you said, that ebb and flow, and we become fascinated with something and become fanaticals about it, and then it kind of dies down. But Buddhism is going very, very strong in other parts of the world.
Oh, words of wisdom. Thank you. It's a fascinating subject, and I think one that is important to address. I'd like to move on to the next part. This one is about Buddhism in the West. So, throughout its long history, Buddhism has continuously adapted itself to serve the needs of the cultures that it's been transplanted into. And now in the West, where Buddhism is quickly growing in popularity, it's again tailoring itself to fit the needs of and mindsets of a new culture. However, this time, the environment is unique. The Western environment is quite unique, an environment of great complexity and diversity, of countless ideologies, cultures, views. It's almost an environment that is, it's also an environment that's also far less trusting of religion, and fewer people aligning themselves with religious traditions. As Buddhism sets root in the West, it's not just passively inserting itself, for the West has been doing what it does best, and that's innovating. This can be seen in the modern open style of research and examination, which has often been lost in the past in dogmatic traditions. For Buddhism, like all things, Buddhism will perish without growth, becoming a stone monolith of dogmatic devotion instead of a living, breathing source of awakening and human flourishing. So, with that said, I have a couple. I thought I'd share this with you guys. Let me put it on the screen. Here's a list of some positive points of Western influence on Buddhism. The first is equality and inclusivity. Western Buddhism naturally imbues the Dharma with its hallmark values of equality, fairness, and transparency. And it's kind of funny as I say that, I'm thinking about how poor equality is maintained in a lot of Western countries in the world. But generally, in the West, we all live in the big cities are all international communities. We have all kinds of people living in a fair amount of harmony. And when we talk about transparency, I thought maybe I should talk more about that. But the idea that traditionally a lot of Dharma is held back by the monk caste. They keep a lot from lay people, and oftentimes lay people can't read the traditional text. They're only interpreted by monastics. So in the West, we have this transparency that we're composing books in English. Anybody can read any Dharma book nowadays. There's nothing held back, right? In Eastern cultures, that's not true. A lot of the great texts, a lot of what the Buddhists taught just simply isn't available. We also have teacher accountability and power dynamics. So the West also brings attention to these issues of ethical misconduct and unhealthy power dynamics within both institutions and in teacher-student relationships. These problems have existed forever, but in the East, people don't dare bring these things up, right? These kind of things are always have happened. They're still happening, but no one says a word about it. Where in the West, we're really addressing them. Number 3 is serious lay practitioners. Although this isn't a strictly Western development, supporting and promoting serious lay practitioners, as we do, is a distinct aspect of Western engagement. And I do believe that that's true. Sure, in the East, especially nowadays, you have a lot more, devoted lay practitioners who really study. You'll see them at teachings, taking notes, really engaging. But that's a really new development. And I think the West influenced the East in this way. Before the West started to engage, I think they saw the way West were engaging and they joined in. Before that, it was very much reminded me of the old Catholic Church, where the priest would do the whole ceremony behind a curtain. All the language, all the songs were all done in Latin, where the lay just had no idea of what was happening. It was just a ritual, a religious ritual that they participated in and were cleansed by it. And maybe it's true. The next one is accessibility. The Buddhist teachings are presented in a much more accessible, practical, and secular way, making them accessible to all. As I just mentioned that, pretty much you can find any high Buddhist teaching or text, and you can find an English translation of it and just buy it at a bookstore, right? In the past, some books you'd had to actually get from your teacher. They were passed down. Now they're all open. But then more than that, in the past, Buddhism was only shared through Buddhism. We're now, we're sharing in secular ways. There's universities that are studying, examining, and teaching Buddhism in a completely open way. People that have no interest in religion are studying Buddhism for all its wonderful qualities. It's a presentation of the nature of reality. Scientists are doing it. So that's extraordinary. The next one is psychological integration. And the integration of modern psychology has increased the scope of Buddhism to include working with modern psychological challenges. So this goes both ways. Here I'm talking about some of the influences from positive influences from the West, but of course Buddhist psychology has influenced Western psychology in a great way. It's just amazing how many of the really prolific and beneficial modern psychological techniques, avenues, organizations, you can see they're deeply founded on a lot of the Buddhist principles. But in addition, our psychology is helping to work with it, but also our psychology is helping to prove it, right? Like science does as well. That's the next one. And to deal with psychological challenges. In the old days, Buddhism just didn't deal with a lot of medical psychological challenges. It just didn't. Wasn't designed to, but now it's being integrated. The next one's scientific dialogue. So this applies kind of to both. Engaging with science has helped validate and refine Buddhist thought and practices. So as Buddhists, we don't shy away from any kind of research. Anything that helps us get to the truth, we're on board with, even if it disproves the Dharma. So we're brave in that regard. And science has done a lot to validate Buddhism. There's so much research on the benefits of meditation that is validating that the paths we're on really are quite amazing. And there's real evidence that proves that awakening is possible, that meditation works. that loving kindness practice benefits everybody. So that's a wonderful thing. And I think it's at the same time helping to refine Buddhism thought and practice, as it does with the SBT. And we have social engagement, applying Buddhism to contemporary issues like social justice, environmental controls, social well-being. This is a lot of these topics come from the West, where traditional Buddhism would have just left it to someone else to do. Thich Nhat Hanh, it's not just the West. Thich Nhat Hanh, of course, is famous for his innovation of engaged Buddhism, where in his time in Vietnam, the story goes that they would, during the war, the monks would be meditating and praying for the well-being of all beings while bombs are dropping all around them, and they seemed to be oblivious to the suffering around them. And they had plenty of resources and rice that people would bring, but they weren't really sharing those with everybody happening around them. And he was outraged by that. And later in his life, he created this thing called engaged Buddhism, and he believed that, Buddhism isn't just about reaching awakening at some further point in your life, that Buddhism has to be engaged in daily life. And so, but nevertheless, he came to that when he was in the West, so maybe we could call that a Western influence. But I think that these Western topics really do influence Buddhism. And now on the opposite, we have some points that require development. Western monasticism is a big one. Although established and growing, Western Buddhist monasticism has yet to truly thrive. Initially, Buddhism was introduced into the West as a primary lay phenomena, even by monastics. In the very beginning, lamas and Zen teachers and things, nobody was trying to create monasticism. It was always just geared towards teaching students. And Western monasticism is growing. And one of the great things that happened recently was the Walk for Peace monks, who brought great attention to Buddhism and monasticism. Next one is support for the Dharma. So financial and cultural support for the Buddhist institutions and monastics is still underdeveloped compared to traditional Buddhist cultures. And of course, we do quite nicely. We get by here at SBT because of the wonderful generosity, but I think a lot of people don't understand how great the generosity and support in the East is, where many of the governments support monasteries and Buddhist financial centers, and people are really devoted to Buddhism and keeping the culture of it alive. So the West could certainly do better with that. And then the last one is community bonds. The Western Sanghas often lack the strong, long-term communal bonds of traditional Buddhist culture. Now, the West, we have that. We have it in other religions. Most Christians, they have their family church. They attend every Sunday. They make their donations. They're bonded in that organization. Some strongly, some more distant, but nevertheless, I think Sanghas still, Buddhist Sanghas, many still kind of lack that. Even here with SBT, we have a lot of people coming and tasting things and liking it for a little while and then moving on to something else. And there's a good part of that. The people find what works for them. But at the same time, as someone who runs an organization, I think a lot of time the thinking is, what works for them, where do they want to be, what do they like, where we don't get a lot of the opposite, the idea that this is an institution that's worth me putting some effort to support, that I think what they teach could really benefit the world. This is something I want to put some effort in. Even if I don't attend, I still would really like to support it. But the idea of bonding with other Sangha members and really developing Dharma friends, Kalamitra, right? The Buddha thought that the Buddhist friends was the greatest relationship there was, the relationship between specifically teacher and student, but also student and student. Sangha friendships was really important. Any comment on those points? I'll leave them on the screen in case you want to see them. How about equality and inclusivity? Originally, I had a piece talking about the discrimination of women. I didn't want to make it too negative, so I just went with a kind of more of a positive spin. But around the world, it's so sad at the position of women in Buddhism throughout history. We like them here. We say, hey, come on by. Wama, do you have your hand up?
I was just gonna say,
Oh,
I think things are changing. I actually didn't, but I'll comment. Um, I think things are changing slowly, a little more slowly than they should be, probably. Um, I do have a question for you about the idea that monasticism is growing because I've been seeing a lot of the opposite opinion that Western monasticism is really dying out because they can't get the support both
oh.
financially and just um in general. So they're saying like 1 out of 3 monastic monks now are disrobing because they can't find a home. They can't, we don't have the tradition like they do in other countries where how they're supporting them and they have no support.
That's kind of always been the case. Even in the East, you have a lot of people disrobe, but I guess I was thinking more of the institutions but it's true, and a lot of these subjects are hard to have a accurate opinion of because they are so many people can see them in so many ways, and you read an article one week, you read a different article next week. But as far as my experience with my friends of who are building and trying to grow their monasteries in America and things, they are doing it, but they're doing it slowly. And so I can't claim that my answer is completely accurate. That's just the experience that I had. So we'll continue to watch. Yeah. When I wanted to become a monk in the West, all my Dharma teachers told me not to. They said, "Oh, that's an Asian thing. We don't do that." And of course, that's a silly thing to say. You know why monasticism is so important? Because it's the Buddhist teachings. I mean, we read over and translate all these words, what the Buddha really meant, blah, 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 and we just ignore the whole Vinaya. The Vinaya it's the first of the baskets of the canon. It's the Buddha's instruction on how to awaken. All your conduct, all your prayers, all your practices, it's all in Vinaya. And it's just weird to me how many people just kind of set it aside. And they just read the sutras, the more philosophical aspects of it. But again, when you follow the threefold training, that's not accurate. And so it was the Buddha created Vinaya and the monastic order as the pinnacle way of achieving enlightenment. And remember, it's not just monks. Lay people, you're in the Vinaya as well. And you're considered an equal to monastics, as SBT believes also. Monastics are strong practitioners, and the hope is they're respected for it, but they're not in a place of authority originally or with SBT. They're just strong practitioners. And the order is there for people that want that kind of a commitment. Everybody's able to do it. So we want to respect them as very strong practitioners. But Vinaya is essential. It's beautiful. It's one of the most amazing things the Buddha taught. And to just literally set it aside without even looking at it, saying, "Oh, we don't need that in the West. We want the slim down version, the 10 days to enlightenment version." That's my thought. Oh, Mr. Dharma, please share with us.
I just wanted to make a brief comment about accessibility because when I went to India, I went to this small Tibetan village called Mainpot. And when I was talking to like the lay people there, what sort of shocked me was the amount of hunger there was for the Dharma because they didn't have access to the Dharma as much as Westerners did. And they would tell me, no, we're lucky if we get one sadhana that we can do for the rest of our lives. Yet you guys get everything.
And access
And
to the teachers as well.
yeah, so I was really taken aback by that. And
Yeah.
it's something that we don't really take advantage of, but we really do have an advantage when it comes to accessibility.
And often the texts, like the Pali texts, they're translated into English, but sometimes they're not translated into local language so local people can read them. Right? Yeah, it's quite amazing, isn't it? We're really fortunate here. Thank you. That's a wonderful story. David Williamson, please.
Yeah, my understanding was that the Buddha ordained women as nuns, but by about 300 years later, there were none. Uh, Is there a consensus in how that happened or why it happened?
That that's not the timeline that I am familiar with.
Okay.
I don't know specifically, so I can't say you're right or wrong. But 300 years after the Buddha, you're looking at just after King Ashoka. I think the nun order is fine there. I think the Theravada tradition lost the nun order later, probably in Sri Lanka, because Theravada is technically was created in came about in Sri Lanka. So they lost the order there. And one of the things that supports that is that the nun order was still carried through to the Mahayana. And to this day, Mahayana schools, like in the East, can still do full female ordination, and they're the only ones that can. Even Tibetans, they can only do novice nuns. So it seemed like it would have carried through all the way through the Mahayana and into China. So I mean, it didn't go into China until after the first century. So I'm thinking that probably isn't true. But there is a lot to say about the Buddha not wanting to ordain women at the beginning, you know? And I
Right.
can't make any apologies for him. The only thing that I can think of is maybe cultural pressure at the time was substantial. We know that the Buddha recognized the idea of optics we call nowadays, right? He realized the importance of the way the Sangha looked to the community. A lot of the monk vows are based purely on the way it looks to others, like not walking with a woman for more than a certain distance so people didn't get the wrong idea. So that's the only thing I can think of, that maybe at the time women were particularly oppressed, and maybe he thought we would lose the support of everyone in the community
Hmm.
if we did such a thing. Because in a sense, you're kind of, maybe the idea was you were stealing the women away from households and men who needed wives. I'm guessing, I have no idea, but it is sad. And it's sad that the Ananda brings up the idea and the Buddha says no. Eventually, he gives in, but then he doesn't. The story goes that he doesn't ordain them himself. He has senior students to go take care of them, teach them. So from the very beginning, it seems really sad.
Mm.
Ethan.
I think the story that Ananda persuaded him looks very much like a justification that was introduced
Ah,
later. Uh,
But
Fascinating.
I heard a theory. I heard a theory that one reason the Buddha was hesitant to ordain women as nuns was because in those days there would be lots of like roving bandits and things like that, and so a small community of nuns would be an easy target, would be vulnerable to unfriendly people.
I could see
Whereas,
that.
so
Thank
Yeah.
you. I could
And
see
I
that.
think you're right, Tarpa, too, that you don't want a lot of women were in oppressive marriages. And if they had this way out to leave their marriages and go become part of a Sangha, he would be stuck dealing with some really
Yeah.
angry men in the community.
Another example of him bowing to social pressure was that allowing his monks to leave to become soldiers. That always seems kind of weird, but the story goes that he did it to appease the king. And so there's accounts of that happening, none of which I know are accurate. So, but let's be really happy that nowadays, especially in SBT, we are so committed to equality. You know, SBT, we don't want to use the word monks and nuns anymore. We use the word monastic because there shouldn't be any difference. And also, there's more, well, there's a whole beautiful rainbow of different types of gender. People, oh, this side, that side, in between. So we say monastic, it's everybody that fits in any way they want to. I didn't know how to say that really politically correct, so I went for the beautiful, poetic way. I hope that didn't offend anyone. I'm still a person of another culture. I'm an old man. Fascinating stuff, though, huh? And of course, there's teacher accountability, right? I often say the age of gurus is over, and it's not just Buddhism. In Hinduism, even more so of a problem, just constant sexual misconduct and money and power. The Theravada tradition has so many problems. They actually have a monk police for the country of Thailand to try to pull in these bad actors. So what's nice in the West, we know a little bit about this, and the idea of it is this transparency. That's what stops this kind of behavior, right? Transparency.
Tarpa, I think that now one has something, I think he doesn't know how to use the hand thing, but I think he's
Ah,
trying to get your attention.
now on, please.
Yeah, I was, as you were talking, I was just thinking about some of the challenges that come with coming into the West with the language and how the challenges with translation. Uh, we often find ourselves trying to take a simple word like samsara and trying to find a single word in English that represents it. And I know these are somewhat academic things, but I think maybe they also affect the overall acceptance of Buddhism, trying to find ways to talk about the stuff in a new language.
Well said. And we get back to a favorite thing I always say, that the Buddha asked his students to share the Dharma in common language that was accessible to both the farmer and the scholar. SBT is based on that principle. When I started it, I wanted to teach straightforward Dharma that people could understand so everyone could benefit from. My tradition that I studied from as well was quite elite. They were the scholarly things that we would teach lay people humbly so they could understand. And I don't have any patience for that. A couple important things to mention with that. There's a big difference between translation and interpretation. A very big difference. People get hung up on translation, and they say, "Oh, there's just no good words for this in English or that." But sometimes there's better words in English. It works both ways. But what's funny is somebody will say, "Oh, I want to." They'll use a poly term for clarity, but then no one knows what that poly term is, so they have to now define that poly term instead of using the English term and then defining the English term of what you meant. So I really have some strong views about that for teaching Buddhism to the masses. Scholars have their own world. scholars that translate, interpret. But interpretation is different than translation. In English you have a word, say you take a word like cool, and he's a cool guy, and 1,000 years from now they're trying to understand what they meant, and they say, well, that means he is a lower temperature than other human beings of his kind. And so we know, of course, you can use words in so many different ways. Guess what? They did that back then as well. So the only way around that is they have this broad range of an education in which you're aware of the different ways that word is used, or the passage so well that it's so clear that they didn't mean body temperature. They meant cool as in cool-headed, non-reactional, right? So the interpreter is the star of the story. Interpreters, that's the beginning point, and often terribly wrong because they're trying to have direct translations. That's not the way we speak. That's not the way we write. We use words in the way we want them. We use them poetically. We use them in all kinds of ways. Now, an interpreter, this is someone with a vast education. They've read all the sutras, and when it comes to those words, they know exactly what they mean. So we're trying to share interpretations of the Dharma in that way, but at the same time, we like to appease the scholars by, in the endnotes, sharing where these things can be found, maybe Pali terminology. Plus, we don't favor single tradition, so I'm not going to share all the different words and all the different Buddhist languages every time we do a teaching. We have students here that are from the Zen tradition. I don't know all the Japanese words for Buddhist terms. Oh, that was a long thing. I hope that was okay now.
Tarpa, Patrick has a question for you.
Lay it on me, Patrick.
It says, what do you think of decontextualization, secularization of Buddhism? Could the 21st century Buddhism just blend into science-based mental health and spirituality? Did you kind of touch on this?
Can I save that for a moment? We're going to talk about that right now, and I'd like to get to that right now if there's no more questions. That's an excellent question, but you're going to ruin my conclusion if I answer it. So I think nowadays the greatest topic of debate among Western practitioners is, what will Buddhism look like? What will Western Buddhism look like, right? Currently, I don't believe we have a Western Buddhism, though I think they're emerging. I'm hoping SBT is part of the conversation. And once again, keeping in mind the present expanded scope and understanding of Buddhism, which includes the popularity of both traditional forms of Buddhism as well as contemporary and less religious forms, what Western Buddhism becomes is anybody's guess. My prediction is that the proven benefits of Buddhism will continue to be absorbed into science, psychology, and healthcare until the two are almost indistinguishable. The advantages that science is a nearly universally accepted discipline, meaning it speaks to all people and all cultures and is generally accepted by all. This bypasses any current religious or cultural biases that would prevent people from engaging in and benefiting Buddhism as a religion. Of course, the concern is that some unforeseen loss in the transmission from Dharma to science might happen, but that's why we have these lovely dedicated Buddhist masters to prevent that. The future of awakening is a future deeply integrated, is a topic, let's say, that's deeply integrated into Buddhism. It's something that all Buddhists spend a lot of time thinking about. I've also seen awakening as not. I have notes here and I'm reading them really poorly. Can I start again? The future is deeply intriguing. I found my problem. The future is deeply intriguing for reflection for Buddhists. I've always seen awakening as not merely a spiritual awakening, but as a natural process of sentient evolution. In this view, awakening represents one end of our spectrum of development, a spectrum ranging from ignorance and confusion at one end and clarity and awakening at the other. I think it's becoming clear that awakening is the direction that humanity has always been moving towards. An evolutionary potential the Buddha recognized, clarified, and demonstrated. A path focused on assessing and accelerating, accessing and accelerating our evolutionary potential. For myself, I don't see human evolution as merely biological, but also it includes cognitive evolution, emotional evolution, social evolution, and again, spiritual evolution, with all pertaining to both the individual as well as humanity as a whole. Understood in this way, humanity's path is and has always been on a slow progression towards awakening, a direction that is unchosen, unceasing, and inescapable. Or, as Buddhists like to say, awakening is the true consummation of life. I'd like to wrap this up with a conclusion. From its humble beginnings, the Buddha's teachings have been consistently proven to be a stable and trusted path for harmonious, ethical, and skillful living, while also being a tried and true treatment for the endemic suffering that plagues common existence. Currently, the Buddhist path is followed by more than 500 million people worldwide, and although its teachings have been continuously reinterpreted throughout the ages, they still remain consistent with its original core tenets of benevolence, nonviolence, wisdom, and moderation and balance. The Buddha's teachings, although being first shared over 2 millennia ago, remain relevant to our current time, for although our world has changed in so many ways, and despite all of humankind's development and cultural differences, our core human psychology, in the form of our hopes, our fears, our needs, has changed very little. The great Indian Buddhist scholar L.M. Loshi, put it brilliantly when saying, a remarkable feature of Buddhism is its universality. The scope of Buddhist teachings is coextensive with the whole of humanity. One of my favorite quotes. I believe the term coextensive, or all-encompassing, also pertains to time and conditions, meaning that the Buddhist teachings are just as relevant today as they were in the Buddha's day, and equally, they continue to be relevant despite new and continuously evolving conditions and circumstances. I think defining 21st century Buddhism is best summed up by the Dalai Lama. In a quote, he says, to be a 21st century Buddhist means having a fuller knowledge of modern education, modern science, and also utilizing modern faculties, but also at the same time having full conviction about the Buddhist teachings, about infinite altruism, bodhicitta, and the view of interdependence. Then you can be a genuine Buddhist and also belong to the 21st century. I thought that was pretty. Any last questions or comments? Patrick, did that answer your question for you? I thought it did. He's always a step ahead of me. What'd you guys think of the presentation? Pretty good? You agree with it? Yeah, I thought it was okay, right? And so it's exciting. This finishes part 1 of Secular Buddhist Essentials. Well, Tarpa, what's part 2? Part 2 is the yummy stuff. We got part two are the Buddhist teachings. We're going to get into all of those beautiful topics. Some a bit complex. I'll try to make it easy for everybody. But we have the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and all emptiness and what is self and what am I and what is my neighbor. We got all that kind of great stuff. So that's going to take us a while to get through. We'll be doing that for quite possibly a good part of the year. The last part, part three, is curtails or contains secular Buddhist practice. So I think that's going to be extensive, but not quite as big. The second part's going to be really big. Are we all set, Wangmo? Yeah? Oh, Data, please share.
As far as this evolution concept they have, which I think is, I don't disagree with it all, but my as myself, and I want to leave the world better than it was. I want to. So how's it personally, each of us? How do we move this, or is that just going to happen? That the world is going to become more benevolent and loving.
Well, I think modern research is really touching that, and especially with scientists like Steven Pinker, who gathers a lot of research. Now we have enough data from the past that we can really look at graphs and see the evolution of compassion and things like that in human beings. He makes a compelling argument. Some disagree, but boy, is it strong. He makes so many brilliant points to so many brilliant things of why we're more compassionate than we were in the past. He cites these things in the past. We're just you forget what we were like 100 years ago, 200 years ago. So that's why I make the assumption there. I say it's now become clear that humans are evolving towards being better people, more compassionate, more benevolent, more caring. Literacy is at the illiteracy is at the lowest it's ever been. World hunger has. You don't hear a lot about this, but there's websites that tailor their feeds to this, pointing out one's called Good News, and they show you every month here's some stuff nobody's talking about. The ozone layer, the ozone hole that everybody was worried about in the 70s, it's gone now. So we have that negative bias, right? And I think with social media and everything, we kind of plug into that. Like we're drawn to hearing about all the things that are going on, but we don't see the positive. So, long story short, I think it's really obvious that we're slowly getting better and better. To me, that is a path towards awakening, towards, in Buddhism, we say our true nature, that benevolent, kind, wise, compassionate, good nature that is really at our hearts. So we're moving. What do we do about it, Dana? You're doing it. Buddhists, we are on a path of, they don't talk about it much, but I think Buddhism is a path of accelerated evolution. We're not just waiting for it to happen, while we watch Netflix. We're actively working on ourselves and we're creating it. We're meditating, we're practicing mindfulness. We're learning. We have practices for developing bodhicitta, goodness. We have all these practices to be becoming better, and not just goodness, but all human virtues, right? Becoming more responsible, becoming a wiser, right? It's not just good, but it's also just great human principles, right? We're becoming better. That's what we do, and we teach it to others, and that helps us accelerate humanity towards our evolution. So that's what SBT does. When people say, "Well, what do you do to help the world?" Well, that's what I do. I try to push people along, evolutionary, and teach to as many people as I can, and I vote. Anybody else want to share questions? Well, I want to thank everybody for joining me. That was a lot of fun. Hey, shortly, in just about 20 minutes, we have our purification ceremony. For those that don't know, this is Sunday and we're in the middle of a retreat. We're having a blast today. So for those that are joining us for the retreat, we have that in 20 minutes. Everybody's welcome to come. It's a beautiful event. We don't have anyone taking refuge, so we're just going to purify everybody's vows. And then shortly after that, we have our last event of the retreat, which is a beautiful loving kindness meditation and a Sangha chat. You don't want to miss that as well. So with that said, let's end today's class with an altruistic affirmation. May all be healthy. May all be prosperous. May all be well. May all be present, free of past regret and future worry. May all abide in constant appreciation, which is the source of great joy and contentment. May all realize their true nature and the true nature of reality, which is awakening, as we talked about. So thanks, everybody. See you back here in 20 minutes. Okay, bye-bye.